We've had a lot of very famous people on my show, the Keen On Show on TechCrunch TV, but it's rare, almost never happens before, that we have a legend, a real legend of the internet. He laughs, but he is a legend, whether he likes it or not. Stewart Brand is the founder of the Whole Earth the Whole Earth catalog. And what are you, Stewart, the CEO of Long Now Foundation, or the founder, or the president?
Co-founder with Danny Hillis.
But it's, of course, your work in the early days of what we call the internet, or the personal computer revolution, that Stewart Brand has become a legendary figure, both inside Silicon Valley and globally. Stewart, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Thank you kindly.
Are you welcome? Are you familiar with TechCrunch?
On and off.
What do you mean on and off?
I think I have known about it at times and then didn't at times.
Means you've never heard of it, probably.
No, actually I've run across it.
Oh, good. Well, Stewart, talk to me a little bit about the origins of the Whole Earth catalog and why you think it's become this iconic moment, an iconic institution in the technological revolution of the late 20th century.
This was a thing that happened in the late 60s that basically bore relation to the counterculture, the hippies, even the New Left. It was dogmatically apolitical.
Meaning that it was rather political also?
No, not political at all. We really didn't give a rat's ass.
Although in the book written about you and the political or the apolitical origins of the web from counterculture to cyberspace, it suggested that your turn away from politics was in itself also political. Is that fair?
I'm sure you could say in the metaphor. Yeah, we went metapolitical. In that sense, I was, I suppose, inspired by Buckminster Fuller, who said if you unfortunately killed all of the politicians next week, no one would notice. If you killed all the engineers and scientists, that civilization would come to a screeching stop. But the main thing that happened was we went counter to the counterculture in a couple of important ways. One was by being apolitical. Another was by being pro-technology. And so a lot of the hippie movement was back to basics, back to the land, all this stuff. And I was part of the commune movement, and in a sense the Whole Earth catalog was started to help the communes who were trying to reinvent civilization sort of from scratch. Unfortunately, everybody had a liberal education.
Why, unfortunately?
Well, you don't know anything if you have a liberal education other than how to construct a sentence and please a certain teacher that what that teacher thinks is art is art.
What's the alternative to a liberal education?
The alternative is things that work, results, science, technology. So, and communes that worked. None of them worked. Not one. Not in China, not in Israel, not in the US. But we tried lots of important stuff. We had our noses rubbed in our fondest fantasies because we actually tried to do these things and failed and scuttled back to town and discovered that our future was in the cities, not in the countryside. And the Whole Earth catalog was part and parcel of that whole phenomenon. And it turned out that basic skills, basic techniques was of interest not just to the hippies but to everybody. And so the Whole Earth catalog became a bestseller. It was the first trade paperback bestseller in the world, and changed various things that it touched. I guess that's where the legend thing comes from. But it's just being successful in a certain way at a certain time.
Well, it captured the imagination, if not of a generation, certainly of a group of very talented people within a generation, guys like Steve Jobs. Why do you think that was? What did you offer that other publications, institutions, cultural organizations weren't offering?
The subtitle was Access to Tools, and it was really direct. One of the peculiarities of that day was that you'd see magazine articles talking about some wonderful new innovation somewhere, and they would carefully not let you know where it was, who it was, how to get in touch, because they thought that was somehow commercial or advertising, or don't tell, and then the people who do it will have to buy some advertising and junky things like that. And we just cut through that, and we're able to do it within a form of self-publishing with the catalog. So a lot of people learned that anybody could publish from the example of the catalog, plus we put the whole details and financial reports and so on of how we did all this as a nonprofit, thinking like a business back in those days. And people just felt not only permission, but a kind of encouragement to just haul off and do stuff. You're seeing that same thing coming back now with the maker revolution, the things that are going on with the maker fairs, Maker Magazine, people grabbing cheap 3D printers and starting to create interesting stuff with it. Biotech is going amateur, and the kind of thing that we were promoting in the late 60s, early 70s is going on a massive scale now. We just saw a presentation on Burning Man, and Burning Man is this kind of creativity, totally unleashed, and it turns out to be a endless resource out there that is increasingly global, as there's more and more young people in the world who are less and less interested in fighting and more interested in creating, less interested in having lots of children, more interested in having very high quality children, being sure they're educated. And the kind of things that the whole Earth Catalog hoped might happen back then are happening in spades right now.
So you, when you look back, I mean, you're obviously not going to claim responsibility for everything that's happened since the whole Earth Catalog.
Way.
But are you proud of the revolution, the cultural and technological revolution that you helped spawn?
Yes.
No reservations?
Good question.
Why is it a good question?
Well, look, there's a lot of things hippies did wrong. We got drugs wrong. We got communes wrong. We got Buckminster Fuller domes wrong. They all leaked. They're terrible for amateurs to build. We got the communes wrong, that this just didn't work at all. Probably got sex wrong. Turns out that free love is not free. We may have been providing the swamp in which AIDS grew. We had a generational vanity that was terrible. We had a generational cruelty to our parents that was truly terrible. The only things I think we were really good at was music and, as it turned out, computers.
And optimism? Or faith in the future?
There was not a hell of a lot of optimism. There's a really, I mean, I was fighting the constant drag of pessimism that romantics always have, and a lot of the hippie movement was a romantic movement. The Back to the Land was a kind of a blood and soil kind of deal. I'm going to go be, hug the tree and be one with the tree and take a drug so that you really feel like you're one with the tree and all this stuff. That actually doesn't do much to help save trees, especially if you demonize loggers who actually work with trees and know something about trees. I was a logger, so I'm prejudiced.
Stewart, do you think that the spirit that you represented and helped develop has been reborn again with social media and Facebook and Twitter?
Yeah. We did a thing called The Well, a Whole Earth Electronic Link. It was an early online community.
It was the first one, right? To be fair.
Not really. We just took bulletin board system technology and amped it up slightly. And the behavior of kind of the gift economy that, again, Burning Man is based on, that a lot of the net is based on, that things like Wikipedia are based on. We saw relatively early on that you could get the best stuff for free by being generous, and discovering that generosity came back. And so the gift economy, doing things for free, doing things for cheap, doing things somewhat outlaw, was not only sort of felt good, rewarding, but the world responded in a rewarding way. Many of us went into business. Steve Jobs was a total, flat out, barefoot in India hippie, and then built the world's largest and most successful corporation without ever dropping any of his hippie qualities. Well, that's interesting.
Stewart, you are now involved very much with the Long Now Foundation. We're actually doing this conversation at the Economist event about innovation. At your presentation this morning, you said something I thought which was very interesting, that to really innovate, you have to do in the long term, and that short-term fixes aren't really effective for innovation. Is that fair?
No. I think you do innovation at all kinds of scales and for all kinds of reasons. The thing that the Long Now Foundation is trying to bring to the game is the same thing really that climate change is bringing to the game, which is how do you deal with multi-decade lead times and multi-decade lag times on the really, really important stuff. And so the question I raise is, can democracies deal with climate change? Right now we're seeing autocracies like China and Singapore, run by people trained as scientists and engineers instead of as lawyers, being much more responsive to these long-term needs of dealing with climate change at the scale it needs to be dealt with. And so we can be short-term, local innovative like mad in the democracies, but it does not step up to the scale of that particular problem set.
How can democracies then learn to deal with long-term problems?
We don't know yet.
And might that mean that ultimately you would be more sympathetic to regimes like Singapore, which
Absolutely.
are run?
Yeah. What I'm finding is that the environmentalists I know who are doing stuff, are trying to design really green towns and new complex ways to make sure that less energy is used for this, that, and the other thing. They're all working in China or in places like Abu Dhabi, where there are folks who can just say, just do it. Because one of the things that emerged as a bad side effect of the environmental movement, I think, of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, is we became very timid in the West, especially in Europe, but also in North America. And things like the precautionary principle said, oh, we've got to imagine every bad thing that might happen with the new technology and then make sure it doesn't happen. Solving imaginary problems is the worst use of innovation in the world. Solving real problems means actually trying stuff, finding out what the problems are, and then dealing with them as they come up. And so the societies that are taking that approach are in the global south. They are the places that don't have a huge regulatory environment based on old problems. They don't have a fearful set of people who basically are afraid of everything new. And they do have a lot of people who are eager to get the hell out of poverty as fast as they can, get their kids educated and moving in the world. They're connected by smartphones increasingly. And innovation is coming from the 5 out of 6 people who live in the global south that are young and full of juice and aren't fighting wars anymore.
Final question, Stewart. I get the sense from this conversation that you don't have to be young to be full of juice. What's your recipe?
I don't know the answer to that. Low boredom threshold. I easily get bored and want to move on.
So we should all have low boredom thresholds?
I'm not sure that would be good or long-term anything, among other stuff.
Well, if the world was full of Stewart Brands, what would the world look like?
A lot of people are saying that won't work.
Well, Stewart Brand, it's a real honor and a pleasure to have you on the show, and I hope you'll appear again very soon. Thank you.
Kindly.